Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, Today is September 7, 2020. So I will be giving my lecture in chameleon values and norms for both sections, Block A and Block B. Uh, Today, before I tackle the subject matter which I have given you as your assignment, I'd like to emphasize some rules that we need to follow so that everything becomes very orderly and methodical in our class. Now, each time that I lecture on CVN, Chameleon Values and Norms, you should have with you your book. No? This book should be beside you always so that you can follow through what I'm talking about, because without this book, definitely it might be difficult for you to comprehend. Okay, that's the first rule, no? So your book should always be beside you so that each time that I discuss on a certain topic or principle, then you could easily understand. That's the first rule, no? The second one is, if you will notice at the end of each unit or chapter, you could see what we consider as the activity sheet. The activity sheets are found on pages 4, 14, 29, 46, 61, 71, and 82. These are the activity sheets for the different chapters that we will take up this semester. Now, so I do not want you to write anything on the activity sheet, or activity sheets rather, because there is a time when we will schedule the accomplishment of the same. So I repeat, you should not write anything on the activity sheets in your module. Okay, the next one, the third one is, as I have said last Saturday, you should have a separate notebook, no, for each of my classes, no. You should have a notebook in CVN, and then you should also have a notebook in NSTP1. Why is that? Because the reason being, I always require my students to jot down or to write down everything that I discuss, so that the mental processing of the ideas or concepts can be developed in you. This is a skill which we are trying to develop so that everything becomes not only cumulative, but it will sharpen your note-taking as well as the skills of summarizing everything that has been discussed. Okay? My next rule would be, assignments should be done in yellow pad paper. No? So each time that I tell you about your assignment, or I will assign a certain topic, then you have to put that down in the yellow pad. No? First, in the yellow pad, of course, you write your name, then the subject, and then I want you to put the date when that assignment was given, no? Not on the date when that assignment will be submitted. It has to be on the date when that particular assignment was given. Clear? And then all the assignments that I'm giving you, you should put that in a folder. No? You should clip each and every assignment in a folder. It should be a separate folder also for CVN, and there should also be a separate folder for your assignments in NSTP1. Okay? Then again, my next lecture for CVN would be on September 9, this Wednesday, and it is also applicable to both sections or blocks. It will be shown simultaneously in block A as well as in block B. So the meeting that we are having today is applicable for both blocks. No, the same with the meeting that we will have this Wednesday, September 9. It will also be applicable for block A and block B. Now, the reason why I am having this video lecture instead of meeting you via Zoom is because we understand that some of you may have connectivity issues, no? Meaning to say that there may be some people here who may have the hard time of connecting to the internet. So what we will do instead, because it's a waste of time if we will just be waiting for somebody to connect, so what we will just do will be the asynchronous method. It's not the synchronous method. Asynchronous meaning I will just put in the lecture in the LMS or in your messenger, and it is up for you to access that anytime you wish to or at your own convenience. Clear? The reason why I'm doing this is because of connectivity issues. No? And for those people who have no copy yet, who have not purchased a copy yet of the module on Kamilan Values and Norms, this book is available already in the Learning Resources Institute or in the library. Just look for Miss Francia Cunyo. Okay, so my lecture for today would deal on the concept of values. As I have given you this as your assignment, what do you understand by the term values? Of course, the values which a person possesses may be different from the values of another person. So this means to say that each of us has a separate value system, no? And that is what we call as individual values, or we call it personal values, no? So the value system of Maria may be different from the value system of Pedro, no? Or the value system of Pedro may be different from the value system of Jerry. Each one of us has his or her own value system. And what are values? Again, may I ask you, what are values? Well, the term values or the concept of values had been amply defined in the module. Okay, you could see that on page 1 of your book. These are general or broad guidelines that define, guide, or motivate our actions. Not only our actions, but even our attitudes and preferences. As I have said earlier, the value system of individuals may differ from one another. Perhaps Maria may place, say for instance, the top value that she embraces or she honors would be the value of honesty, no? But in the case of Pedro, the top value that he recognizes would be the value of courage, no? So meaning to say that even in our value system, each value will occupy its own order, no? And that is what we call the hierarchy of values. Hierarchy is spelled as Hierarchy. Hierarchy. I repeat, hierarchy would mean there is an order. No order depending on which value are you going to recognize or acknowledge as the most important, and then going down it will be considered as the least important. It depends, no, on the individual himself. So the value system, I repeat, the value system is different from person to person. And of course, in the hierarchy of values, the value which one person may acknowledge as the most important may be different from that of another person. Understand? Clear? So, depending on the personality traits or even the experiences of a person, he may put one value ahead of the others, but that is how it works. No, the value system may be different from one another because we have our own personal or individual values. Okay, you understand? So, I repeat, the values that one person possesses or recognizes may be different from that of another person. That being said, so uh, we can say that values are personal in nature, personal to the individual himself. That's why we have what we call individual values. Well, on page 2 of the book, you could see some examples there like honesty, courage, loyalty, kindness, humility. I'm not saying that these are just the values that a person possesses or acknowledges. There are a lot of values, a multitude of values that we could think of which every person may have in his life. But then again, these are just examples. You just have to read them specifically as to how these values are manifested socially, because definitely values have to be manifested or exhibited to other people. That's why we call them values are shared to other people. Okay, so you just read them. So I would like to go further to what we call the general characteristics of values, which you could find on page 3 of your book. The first general characteristic is that values are general guidelines or ideals which people share. Not ideas, but ideals which people, an ideal is something that is aspirational. An idea is just a concept. No? So you have to check that. Values are general guidelines or ideals. An ideal is something that is aspirational. No? You may not be able to attain it, but definitely this is a guideline. Okay? So as we have defined values, they are general guidelines as opposed to specific norms of behavior, which can be considered in the case of norms. So if we will, by way of an advanced knowledge, you have here your set of values. And what did we say about values? Values are general or broad guidelines or ideals which will guide one's actions, one's conduct, one's preferences, one's attitudes. No? So these are broad guidelines, but we cannot see values because later on, one of the characteristics of values is that it is abstract. Meaning, when we say that values are abstract, you cannot see, you cannot touch, you cannot use any of your senses, because that's how it goes. No, values are abstract. No, these are abstract nouns that has something to do with more on the mental processes, on the cognitive part of an individual. Okay, so that's the first one. Values. That's the first general characteristic. Values are general guidelines. No, and being general, of course. These are general guidelines which we consider as very important, which we consider as very desirable, which we consider as these ones are which we consider as good, no, not bad but good. These are good generally because if we base our conduct or behavior and even the way by which we decide on things or the choices of things, well, values will play a very important part in how we manifest ourselves to others or on how we decide on certain issues that we are confronted with. Okay? The second general characteristic is what we call values have order in the hierarchy of values. I was telling this to you before or earlier, rather, that in the case of values, the value system of an individual may differ from that of another. They're not identical, meaning they're not the same. The value system of Maria will differ from that of Pedro, or even from that of Jerry. And then that is not all, no? Uh, we have what we call the hierarchy of values. Hierarchy meaning there is an order, no order. Which value is what you consider as the most important, the next important, the least important if you go down the bottom. So there is the ranking of values. It depends on the individual or the personality traits of an individual, no? So this hierarchy of order, of course, would mean that the value that occupies the topmost in that hierarchy would be the most important for that individual. And the lowest, of course, is the value which that individual considers as the least important. And of course, those in the middle would definitely be medyo lang, like maybe important but not so, or important but there are other values that that individual considers as most important. No? So, I repeat, the hierarchy of values will again depend on the individual himself. Some individuals may put so much emphasis on the value of honesty. Others may embrace the value of kindness, for instance. It depends on the individual. But the individual has also to rank which values are most important to him. And the most important, of course, definitely would decide which will be his priorities, which will be his attitudes, and which will be his choice or alternative in making decisions. Okay? So, this one is your assignment next time, no? I'd like you to research on the theory of value that had been conceptualized by Max Ferdinand Scheler, no? So you put that, you have to make a research on the theory of value by Max Ferdinand Scheler, and then if you research on this, you have to put that down in the yellow sheet. You put the date, which is today. You summarize what is the theory of value in your own words. I do not want you to just copy everything. I want you to assimilate this theory based on what you know and how you understand the concept. Okay, so you have to, this one is your first assignment, assignment number 1. Number 1 for today only, because you had other assignments before. Number 1 is the theory of value by Max Ferdinand Scheler. No, so you have to summarize that. Okay, I will give you another assignment later on, number 2, but that goes later on. Now, the third characteristic of values is that values are normative in nature. Of course, we go to the term normative. By the term normative, we mean to say that it is being used as an evaluative tool, no, on how we base our decisions or even our actions. Normative meaning it is used as a weighing scale whether a particular action or behavior is good or bad. No, we evaluate first the action that we will undertake, whether it is good or bad. And of course, the way we evaluate that is through our values, no? The kind of value system that we have. That is why I was always telling you that you cannot disregard or even ignore the value system of an individual, because the manner by which he acts outwardly, or even the way he decides, or even the way he gives his preferences or attitudes, will always have something to do with the value system that he possesses. No? So values are very important. They are normative in nature. Normative meaning evaluative. in nature. We evaluate our action, we evaluate our behavior based on the values that we hold. Very important. Okay, the next characteristic is that values are abstract as they have cognitive elements. No? So, by unlocking difficulties, there are terms that you need to know. The first is abstract. Abstract meaning it's something that we could not see. It is just there. It is not perceptible through sensory experience. We cannot see it or feel it by our own faculties or senses because they are abstract. No? They are abstract meaning we could not see. No, we could not see. And then the other term is what we call cognitive elements. When we speak of cognitive, we are talking about the mental processes. It's more on the mental processes or the mind working. That's cognitive. No? So here, abstract, we cannot see it, we cannot see it, we cannot touch it. But what the nature of values is more of cognitive meaning the mental aspect. No, it's the mental aspect. So values such as, say for instance, honesty, courage, loyalty, kindness, or humility, and others are all abstract. No, they are abstract nouns. And when we say abstract, it is something that we cannot physically use or touch through any of the five senses of an individual. Okay, that was what I was telling you earlier, that being abstract, values are concepts or are things that you could not see. It only stays or lingers in the mind. No, values are cognitive in character or nature. It contains cognitive elements. Okay. Next would be that values is a matter of faith and belief. Well, of course, faith and belief are two different terms we have to define. Faith would be placing our trust and confidence on something, and we take that as important, or we take that as important because it will lead to goodness. No, it will lead to something good. The ultimate aim of everything that we do is, of course, to bring about the goodness of something, no, not something that is bad. No, we have to bring about the goodness. That's why this is desirable. No, faith is like that. No, we place our trust or confidence on something because we think that when we place our trust and confidence in that something, it will bring about goodness. It will bring about the desirability of something. It could bring about something that is essential for us. Now, with regard to belief would mean an acceptance of something which, even if there is no evidence or proof at all, you already accept that as something that is true, no? Because that is already their belief. Just like the belief of a certain faith. No? If you believe in some, or the belief that the belief, say for instance, of the Catholic Church that there is purgatory, something like that. You take that as something even without proof or without evidence anymore. So you need to distinguish these two terms, no? Faith and belief. I repeat, faith would mean you put your trust or confidence on something because you believe that something will bring about goodness, no? Or something that is desirable. And then belief, on the other hand, is that you belief would mean that you have to accept on something even without any prior evidence or proof. It is already your belief because you are already accepting it as something that is true even without proving it. Okay, the next characteristic would be values are related to the emotions and sentiments. Well, of course, values are not only cognitive. Values do not only contain cognitive elements, but they also pertain to the emotions and sentiments. Usually, when we speak of values, they are the formal objects of emotions, no? Meaning to say that each time that we decide on something, we put our values first. And these values are put in our spirit, no? To the core of our whole being. That's why we say that they pertain to emotions and sentiments. These values transcend our whole self, no? Because it concerns also about emotions, about our sentiments, about our feelings as individuals. They are the heart of our existence in life, no? That's why you cannot just disregard, or you cannot just ignore the values that you possess, because these are already there in your own, in your whole being, no? In the core of your whole being. So because they are like that, no? They also control the kind of preferences that we have, the attitudes that we have, the behavior that we exhibit to society. They manifest through all these actions that we undertake. Okay? The next would be values are the basis for the choices of things. Of course, when we speak of choices, we talk of alternatives. And when we talk of alternatives, we are put on a crossroad on which thing or which one is the most desirable, the most important to us. Because remember that values are some things that we hold very important, very dear to us. And that being so, when we decide on something, we always put, or we always consider the values that we hold very important to us, no? We just do not decide based on our whims and caprices, but we decide because we have our set of values. Set of values are important to us, and we do not want to disregard or ignore these values or disobey these values, because once we do disobey or we do disregard, the feeling is different. No, we may not have that. Our conscience will tell us that we have done something wrong. That's why I was telling you earlier that values are not only cognitive in nature, but they also contain the elements of emotions, no, or sentiments. Sentiments meaning nagsisentimiento ka, no? Hindi, you cannot also say that my values are never important, so you cannot just do that. You cannot ignore your values, because the values, like for instance, the value of honesty. When you are put in a workplace where the norm or the culture is more on corruption, of course, there may come a time when you say that you are misplaced in that institution. You are not happy about what is happening in that institution. The reason being, your values are being trampled upon. Your values are not consistent with the values of the organization that you are working for. That's why, because of that, there will be a clash between your personal values, between your individual values, and the values of the institution that you are working for. Okay? And of course, the choices of things, no? Even our work, no? When we choose the kind of career or work, we always put into consideration the values that are important to us, no? We do not want our values to be trampled upon, to go down the drain and say that, anyway, I have my work. No, it's not like that. You put the values first, you choose a work or the workplace that you would like to go to, and then you have to harmonize everything. The values, your personal values, and also the values of the company that you work for. Then next would be values are relatively permanent. No? course, there is that element of permanence in values, but we are not saying that values are totally or absolutely permanent, because values may change by the lapse of time. When I say they may change by the lapse of time, well, it depends on the experiences that you may encounter later on, the people that you may meet later on, and even the lessons that you have learned for uh, everything that you have done in life. No? So this may change the value system that you may have. But when I say that they are relatively permanent, of course you have to define the word relative. Is they are more or less important. That is what we mean by relatively permanent. They are more or less permanent. We are not saying that they are absolutely or totally permanent, that they are already there and you cannot change that. They may change depending on the individual's experiences, on the environment, the people he meets, and the lessons he learned, no, in life. No? Okay. Then the next general characteristic is that values bring cohesiveness in society. Of course, we have to define the word cohesiveness or cohesion. Cohesion would be something that unites a certain group, a certain society or community. Why is that so? Why do we say that values bring cohesiveness? Well, of course, for a certain society or community, or say for instance for a country like the Philippines, we are united by our culture, no? The culture that we have. Of course, cultural values will define who we are as a people, as a nation. And each time that you go outside the country, whenever you see a Filipino, you are happy because you are bound by almost the same set of ideals, the same set of principles, the same set of experiences, because you come from the same country. No? First, you already have a common denominator about your language. No? Second, about your looks. No? Third, about your temperament or about your sentiments. Of course, these are things. And even the culture that you have, the culture will be the way of life, no? The way we eat, the way we drink, the way we respect our parents. These are the way of life that I'm telling you, and it's a part of your culture. That's why when you see a Filipino abroad, your kababayan abroad, it seems that you have known him or her for a long time because you share the same culture, you share the same sentiments, no? You share the same experiences, you share the same language, you share the same viewpoints, you share the same beliefs, etc., etc. So that being said, of course, a Filipino will always defend his compatriot. Filipino. You will always love your country because you are a Filipino. And being a Filipino, there is that bond between you and your country, and you and your people. No? So, di ba, ka-Pilipinohan ko naman yan. So, that means to say that you share the same sentiments, no? And that brings cohesion or unity among yourselves. And then finally, we have values are motivated for public welfare. When we speak of public welfare, we speak of the public good, no? Satisfaction of our individual and collective needs, no? The reason why we have these values is because it's not only for ourselves that we need to satisfy, but even the needs of others for the public good, no? The reason why we place so much value in honesty as a people is because we want that all people in the government should be honest, should be transparent, and not corrupt for the good of the greater majority. No? So we hold these values not only for ourselves but for others as well, no? For the common good. That is what we mean by public welfare. Mahaba na ba? Minutes.
34 minutes. 34 minutes.
So we continue again on Wednesday. But your assignment, your added assignment, aside from the theory of value by Max Ferdinand Schiller, is that I'd like you to research on, aside from that, the values propounded by Milton Routledge, no? By Milton Routledge, and you need to understand the true nature of human values, because next time we will be tackling about instrumental values and terminal values. So number one would be the theory of value by uh, Max Ferdinand Weber, no? Max Ferdinand Schiller rather. And then the second one would be the nature of human values by Milton Routledge, because that is what we will discuss next. No? What are instrumental values? What are terminal values? The differences between these two values. No? So we will continue the discussion by Wednesday, September 9. And as I told you earlier, the things that we will discuss today are applicable to both blocks or sections, for block A and also for block B. And also my discussion again on Wednesday, September 9, will also be applicable for both sections. Okay? So I repeat, your assignments will have to be clipped in a folder, and the moment that I will require that, do not send it anymore, because we may have meetings, personal meetings sometime to discuss about your projects in NSTP. So I will give you instructions when to bring your assignments for my check-in. But you have to date all the assignments and then clip that in a folder, and then I will require you to submit that some other time. Okay? Each meeting, I will be giving you your assignment or assignments, and you have to put that in the folder. Okay? Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. See you Wednesday.